Hello everybody, welcome to Percussion Axiom TV. I'm your host Tom Burritt, and this is episode 27, and I'm so excited to finally get this stout thing moving. Sorry, it's been really kind of a crazy week, as it always seems to be. But I haven't been this excited about an episode since episode 19 when Nancy Zeltzman stopped by, and it was great. It was one of our most popular and most watched axioms ever. So here we go. Before we get started, thanks so much for all the awesome comments for the last episode. It's great communing with you guys and answering questions and going back and forth on Twitter as well. It's just fantastic. So thank you so much for that. Big ups to Steve Weiss, who are actively engaging with you guys, talking to you as you're ordering your music. And I appreciate those of you who shouted out that you watched the show and you're ordering music from them, partly due to the show. So thank you guys so much for those of you who did that. So congratulations to them. They obviously understand how valuable it is to utilize Twitter, for example, to directly converse with their customer base. And I'm sure you guys, who have gotten a tweet from them are really, feel really good about that. So that's exactly right. So big ups to Steve Weiss. That's fantastic. Okay, so all the comments that we're going to have after today's show will commune at thomasburritt.com is probably the best place. If it's something, more complicated question, leave it in the comments. If it's a real more simpler one, just go ahead and tweet to each other or to me or whatever via Twitter. And if you don't know what Twitter is, go check it out. You can follow us and as we go through this process. So we got to move right on with the show because there's lots to cover. All right, so first of all, getting started with this etude. Don't be scared. Okay? Don't be scared. I'm going to make this as easy as I can in the way that I deliver this. And I hope that you'll go for it even if you're not sure. Okay? Now, some of you maybe have even played this or you've played music like this, but I know there's lots of you out there who have never even looked at anything like this before. So don't be scared. We're going to break it down, and it'll be, don't worry, you'll get through it. We'll all survive, okay? So, all right, so today's axiom is comparing apples to apples. Okay, this isn't really atonal, although it sort of says it it's somewhere that it said it was atonal, but it's not really atonal, but it's certainly not tonal, okay? So we need to think about 20th century music and not listening to it and expecting to hear 17th, 18th, 19th century music, okay? It's totally different. That's when harmony ruled. That's when pitch ruled, okay? Now, in 20th century, everything else is equally as important as pitch and harmony, okay? And pitch has been freed, meaning it's not based on consonance dissonance. Every pitch is equal, okay? But the music is equally more about other types of scales, rhythm, articulation. All those things have been heightened in the 20th century. So don't compare apples and oranges, okay? This is going to sound like something from a long time ago. It's going to sound like music of this century, or actually past century, right? So compare apples to apples. That's today's axiom. And I think we all need to do that more as we listen to new music. And I think you're going to enjoy it a lot better and you're going to understand it a lot more. Okay, that's today's axiom. So moving on with etude number 3, like Gordon Stout. Okay, so when you learn something like this, it looks pretty complex, right? There's lots of black on the page. You spend time breaking it down. I spent about 15-20 minutes before the show just really looking at this, trying to figure out a game plan on how to deal with this, okay? So today's goal for this episode is to learn for next time up to measure 14, okay? Go ahead and number your measures. At measure 10, I had to add one right before measure 10 because my book is old. Hopefully you guys won't have to do that, but just so there's no confusion. Measure 14 ends right before the a tempo, third line down or so. All right, so that's where we're going to go. So we're going to talk just about that today. Oh, and I'm going to ask you to learn the last 3 or 4 measures as well because they're just like the very beginning. So you don't have to learn it from the beginning and end at the end. You can skip around. You already know the stuff at the end in the recap, so go ahead and finish that out too. So we'll know about 20 to 30% of the piece after this, which is great. Okay, so we're going to talk about the opening phrase to start with. If you look at this a little closer, you'll see that measures 2 and 5 are identical. That's nice to know. Measures 3 and 6 are also identical. And then 1 and 4 are not the same. So too bad. Sorry about that. But that means we've basically got 3 different things to learn in these first 6 measures. Okay? So that helps. So it might help to learn each of those separately. There's 2 important things about this whole etude that are important from a sort of pitch concept or a collection of pitches. The first are sonorities. So this 5th, separated by the tritone, there. That's really important in this etude. You'll see that come back a lot. So, look for that. It's, for example, it's in the measure 4 at the very beginning, and it's sort of at the beginning too. So that collection of pitches is very important. Look for that. And then the rest of it is octatonic. Octatonic scale, which is basically an 8-note scale, which is the alternation of the half and the whole step. This is a very popular scale to composers of the 20th century, primarily because it's got a lot of tritones inside the scale as you combine the tones. And composers love tritones because they're very non-committal. You can just hit a tritone, which is a diminished fifth, by the way. Sorry, there. None of those really have any kind of direction from a tone, they don't really want to resolve. They're just very independent as far as 2 pitches go. So that's why composers of the 20th century like that. And many, many, many pieces utilize the octatonic scale. So that would sound like this. The octatonic scale in this case is here. Okay? So those 2 things, those 2 pitch collection explain a lot of what's going on in here. All right, so the second phrase starting in measure 7. You'll notice measure 7 and 8. Now we're getting into more of the octatonic stuff. Are basically the same. They're just reorchestrated a little bit. You'll notice the tail end of the bar at the G natural. He just shifts things around a little bit, so they're basically the same. The rhythm's a little different, but the notes are exactly the same. Now, there's an A flat in these 2 measures, I believe, that I can't really explain. I don't know why it's there. When you analyze things, you can't figure everything out. Maybe next time I see Gordon, I'll ask him. I don't know. But don't worry about that. That's the only difference, because that technically isn't in the octatonic scale there, but don't worry about that. All right, so measure 9 and 10 are all octatonic. So practice your octatonic scale. You can work on it like this with octaves. Except more accurately. And that will really help you with this. And just get an idea of what that scale looks like visually on the keyboard. All right, so that was measure 9 and 10. You got to draw that little line in, the bar line there if you have to. Measures 11 and 13 are exactly the same, so that's good. You learn 1. You've got both. And measure 12 is also octatonic, okay? So really the secret to the second phrase here is just really thinking about the octatonic scale and getting that in your sort of wheelhouse there. All right, and then measure 14 is, very different actually. And I can't explain that, but anyway, it does have a lot of fourths, which is important in this, in the earlier part of like the introduction to this etude. So, all right, so that's it. Now, there's lots of things we haven't had time to really talk about yet, like rhythm, dynamics, and articulation. Okay, those things are basically definite. They're the three or four things that actually are sort of definite in music, right? It's either the right or the wrong rhythm. It's either the right or the wrong dynamic or articulation. So, I'd like to talk more about the things that are indefinite, like phrasing and expression. We'll get to all that eventually. But today was mostly mechanical, just figuring out, what this really is. All right. So I hope you feel a little bit better after you go back, make some marks based on what I said, and I hope this makes you feel a little bit better for those of you who are a little scared, okay, about what's happening here, and just make your goal to get up to 14. Let's say 7-8 days. Hopefully, is all it'll take. All right. I think if we do a little bit, break it up between that time, we should have no problem getting through that. It doesn't matter how fast you get it; just kind of get it in your head and really start tearing this thing apart from a compositional standpoint. That's really important to how I play music. And it's actually really helpful when it comes to memorizing music well. If I know what scale I'm playing, if I know the pitch collection, and if I can actually, what I call decomposing the work, right? It's kind of cheesy maybe, but decomposing the work, kind of figuring out what the composer's up to. When I start to get a real pulse of that, I get really excited because I can see what the composer is actually thinking. And then I start to value the music on a whole other level. And that's something that is hard to experience with some other pieces that are very popular in our repertoire. And one of the reasons, by the way, why I think this is a great choice for what we're trying to do here. So that's it for today. Comparing apples to apples. Look at this, learn from it, learn about what's important here, and I think you'll appreciate it a lot more. And so we'll get to the next phrase, what we'll define next time. Go to thomasburritt.com, leave comments there that are more serious or in-depth, and then as you're learning it, you want to tweet out what you're doing. If you got a question, that's great. So today's question of the episode is encouraging you guys basically to do exactly what I just described. Go to Twitter, go to thomasburritt.com. I want to hear how you guys think. I'm sure you have different ideas than I do. Don't just react to what I have to say. I want to hear what you guys did that was different maybe than what I came up with, because I want to learn from this too. And that's it. So really excited for we're doing this now. Have a great time, and we'll see you next time.